Hi, everyone, and welcome to our 3-day Fun with Food and Farming live event series presented by Agscape, 4-H Ontario, and Brescia University College. My name is Emma, and I'm a master's student at Brescia, and I'll be running today's event. As you enter the session, please feel free to type in the chat your school's name and perhaps your class's favorite fruit or vegetable. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Danielle Battram, who is a professor at Brescia in London, Ontario. She is a researcher, a registered dietitian, and a professional home economist. She, along with some other individuals at Brescia, developed and implemented Brescia's community garden. So today she's going to talk to us all about school gardens, what we can grow in them, and how we can use them to benefit students and the schools. So welcome, Dr. Battram. How are you doing today?
I'm very good. Thank you very much. And thanks for having me today.
Thank you. So thank you again for participating in this event series. Is there anything that you'd like to add to your introduction? Anything you'd like the audience to know, or what you'd like to say before we get started?
No, not at all. But I'm again, I got to say hello, and I have to say Ireland is here. So hello, all the way across the pond. We're so happy to have you. Awesome. And I'll say hi to Brampton as well.
Lovely. So today during the session, I'm going to ask Dr. Battram some questions about herself and school gardens, and she's also going to share some of the photos of the garden at Brescia. And if you yourself have any questions for Dr. Battram as we go along, please type them into the chat box and we'll address them as they come up. So I'd like to start off by helping the audience get to know more about what a registered dietitian does. So what do you do in your daily role, and how can dietitians help students learn about food and farming?
Sure. So registered dietitians actually are involved with all kinds of things to do with food. So anything to do with food, we're there. A lot of times people just think of us as, the food people in the hospital. So people who support people while they're unhealthy, or maybe people who are supporting people recovering from maybe illnesses or that have illnesses like diabetes and even COVID. But basically we do everything to do with food. So you have people like me who are teaching and doing research. You have other dietitians in public health that go into the schools and teach about foods. We have dietitians in food companies, that are helping to develop products and make sure they're the healthiest they can be. Even if you have a grandma or grandpa in a nursing home, the menus and the foods that are provided are looked over by dietitians. So anything to do with food, we're all over the place. And certainly it's our job to try to educate everyone on good nutrition and good eating and good food and everything to do with food.
Mm-hmm. Definitely. Those are certainly a number of areas that dietitians can work. And I know from experience that not too many people know where I might work in the future and where people like you do their job. So that's really insightful. Thank you. Yeah. So we know that you made a school garden at Brescia University College with some other individuals there, including the chef. So can you tell us why you decided to develop and implement this garden, and what your specific role was as a dietitian?
Sure. Gardening is actually something that's been a part of our history and our tradition at Brescia. So Brescia's been around for over 100 years, and the nuns that used to run, and they're still involved, but that used to run Brescia actually had gardens and worked the land. And we've actually rented out land to farmers that they can actually use our land to actually grow things. So it's part of our tradition. We're very excited that we have it back. We're very excited to get the community engaged. So that's one of the reasons why this is so fantastic. Another thing is we've got a foods and nutrition program. So, having a garden and being able to extend that into our education and learning for our students is very important. So we're very excited about that aspect. Another thing that's really important to us is going out into the community and aiding and supporting the community. So we know that there are individuals that sometimes can't afford food on a regular basis. And certainly we know that the cost of food is going up. And so sometimes fruits and vegetables are very expensive. So we want to be able to support people in our community, whether that's, students on campus, or whether that's families in the community, maybe through the food bank or things like that. So we're doing that as well. And the thing that I'm really passionate about is that I've partnered with a group here in London, Ontario, that is doing food literacy for kids. So they do field trips. So Growing Chefs does field trips and summer camps for kids to come and learn about gardening and cooking and all that fun stuff. So we're looking forward to actually extending that and bringing students from elementary and high school on campus so that you can come and learn from us as well. So this garden is going to serve so many different purposes.
Yeah.
And I'm basically there to help guide things and help to, make sure our messaging, we're going to have a website that's going to be developed and make sure messaging is on point and things like that. So
That's
it's
really cool.
a big team effort.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, my previous understanding was that it was just for the students at Brescia or just to support the Mercato, which is the cafeteria, I guess you could call it, at Brescia. But it's really cool to hear that it will be some sort of like field trip aspect as well for elementary school students with Growing Chefs. That's really awesome. We have a question from Mercedes. So when you started the community garden, what was the first thing that you did to get started?
Truthfully, funding. So the first thing we did was we went out and tried to find some funding to support what we'd like to do. And so that was the initial thing. And then the second thing we did was we formed a committee. And so that's the committee, the steering committee that I sit on with. Again, you mentioned chef. We've got staff members. We've got other faculty. We're looking to have a garden club of students to help support. So funding and then having a steering committee that would help guide where we're going to go with the garden was the first couple things we did.
That's really awesome. Thank you, Mercedes. So with that, I guess we can also share some of those photos that you provided to me ahead of time. So this one has a nice little Brescia garden coming soon sign, and then little some dirt. Is this the spot? I guess the initial spot that the garden was supposed to go.
Yes.
Into? Yeah.
So again, we got some funding to support garden work, and then we had to find the location. And so of course we had to spend a lot of time talking to people about that. This actually had a lot of bushes and things, so it's been cleared. This site is actually what we're going to be doing actually is putting raised bed gardens and some picnic tables. We've got a space now cleared for all of our tools and a shed and things like that. And so we're just in the process of planning how those raised beds are going to look. And we partnered with a group that helped us do that. So this is going to be more raised beds and an area where people can go and sit and relax. And hopefully we'll have some flower beds and things like that. So it's going to be a gathering space, really.
Lovely. A nice place to have lunch on campus.
Absolutely.
Sounds great. And so this, I assume, is the first site of the garden.
So this is our main site. So this is where the bulk of the produce is going to be. The foods are going to be actually grown. Yeah. And you can see the two of my committee members, Mike and Tim, are there. And so this area has been cleared. You can see that we've started to put up some deer fencing. We have a lovely amount of deer here on Brescia campus. We see them all the time. We're not quite sure what we're going to do with the gophers yet, because we have a lot of those as well. But yeah, so this is the site where the bulk of the produce that we'll likely donate to community organizations. That's where this will come from.
Awesome. That sounds great. Yeah, I was walking along campus the other day and was looking and thinking about taking a picture of this space as it is right now, but it was covered in a little bit of snow. So I'm glad that we have this photo here to share with everyone. So Jordan asks, did you have to do soil tests before knowing it was a good potential location for a garden, or did you bring in all new soil?
I know we did not bring in new soil. Whether testing was done, unfortunately, Mike would have been the guy to ask. But I can tell you that a ground cover was laid in the fall to make sure that nutrients were going into the soil. And again, Mike is our resident agricultural guy. And so I can't tell you what that is, unfortunately. But certainly we know that we're going to have to put compost. And we've been talking about the fact that we are going to be adding a bit of soil and compost to the mix this year. Great.
Thank you. Thanks, Jordan. So this little picture, I'm assuming we're getting some seedlings, getting the seeds started. So maybe you can tell us a little bit more about this photo.
Sure. This is actually for my own garden.
Oh,
so
wow.
you've got a picture that's coming up of my own garden. So, I started this garden and I would buy plants and I would buy seedlings and seeds. And then I started thinking, well, wait a minute, I could do this on my own. So it's become a more of an endeavor for me. So we just planted our, most of that is going to be tomatoes and peppers. We've got some eggplant in there as well, some ground cherry. And so me and a couple of friends, we've started our seedlings. So this is actually going to be going into my garden. It's my understanding, though, that the main garden is also starting their seedlings as well at Brescia.
Great. Can I ask where that work is being done at Brescia? Is it in one of the labs or the offices?
It's not on campus. Somebody's doing it in their home for right now.
In their home. Cool. Very cool.
Yeah.
And then finally, like you said, your own garden, which I love the construction, the little gate and everything. It's very adorable.
This is my first attempt at construction. So if we have any engineers in the group, please no comment. I started with the main garden. You can see I've got the two side cars right now, I call them. I've added to the garden. It's so tempting once you become successful to want to do more. This is my garden. I'm very much looking forward to getting it started.
Looks great. I like I said, I love the little gate, and I'm sure you don't have deer as a problem, but maybe more bunnies and things like that. For sure.
The scaffolding and all of, I call it the scaffold that's around the whole thing. I do have to deal with a lot of bunnies, and you'll see the sides even. I'm going to have to raise the rails there because I've got bunnies. And they like to get in there.
Of course. They're so cute, but giving you some trouble with your tomatoes. Well, thank you for sharing those photos with us, especially some of the personal ones of your own garden. Now that we've looked at those and you've talked about your own personal garden, can you tell us a bit about what foods are going to be grown in the Brescia School Community Garden, and also what maybe schools in the area could grow in their own school gardens?
Sure. We just saw the plan actually for the Brescia garden. So we're growing almost, I don't want to say everything, but we've got tomatoes and pumpkins, and we've got peas and beans and carrots and onion and leeks, and it goes on and on and on. So when you have a larger garden, especially in that large space, you can put things like zucchinis and pumpkins and watermelons, things that take up a lot of space.
Yeah.
In my own garden, I had to kind of create those sidecars because the tomatoes would overtake a good portion of that main garden. And so in my own garden, I have removed anything that sprawls too much, takes up a lot of space.
Yeah.
But you can put a whole bunch of different varieties of things. I've tried new things every year. Last year, I tried fennel or endive.
Wow.
And did not work.
Okay.
So, I'm not really going to try that again this year.
Yeah.
I tried tomatillos, which are the green tomatoes, and I made a wonderful salsa.
Yeah,
so,
that sounds great.
You can try anything. I think the one thing I've learned is trial and error. And you just try, and if it works, great. And if it doesn't, you can try again after you do a little bit of reading. And if it doesn't work, then you move on.
You always have next year to try something else, like you said.
Absolutely.
It's very interesting that it's hard to imagine pumpkins growing in that garden at Brescia, because you imagine, those big pumpkin farms and massive fields, but it's really cool to think about having all those different varieties. And it's a big plot, but it's still, I guess it's quite small still, it's really great that you're able to get so much out of it.
Yeah.
So we have a question. As registered dietitian, what was your biggest motivation to start the garden? And was nutritional value considered when determining which produce was planted?
To the latter question, no. Any fruit or vegetable is good. So the more we eat fruits and vegetables, the better we are. We try to get 5 a day. And that's all I'll say, I guess, about nutrition. We really just wanted variety. Things that we could grow, especially in the boxes. That plot I showed you with the boxes, we only get sun in half of it. So we had to be careful about the types of things that we're going to grow. The biggest motivation I have about gardens is that it's a great way to teach people about eating well. If you grow it, you'll eat it. And we find that. And you'll get excited about maybe trying things. And so for me, getting involved in a garden is just basically about getting people to try foods, try different types of foods. And if we can get them to eat more fruits and vegetables, then that's fantastic. But it's to get people excited about eating food.
I definitely agree that that's the main goal. It's just when you grow it. I know when I was growing tomatoes, and even I thought I bought cherries, but I ended up buying gooseberries, and still I was like, I guess I'll try to make a jam out of this. Like I didn't want it to go to waste because I had grown it. So it's definitely a great tool.
Yeah.
I know you talked a little bit about what will be done with the food at Brescia. It's going to go to some community organizations. In the sense, so if a school makes their own school garden, who at that school can use those foods, and what can be done with it? How could schools kind of reach out to community organizations and get those connections started?
Sure. It can be used by anyone. I've known, school gardens, they use it for taste testing with the students. They've used it for lessons. They've used it for snack programs. They've used it to give to families and have families come in and actually have boxes.
Yeah.
I know that staff takes it home. That's one of the things we're excited about as well, that there'll be some produce for staff to take home. So you can use it in a variety of different ways. You do have to kind of check in with boards to make sure that, that's allowed and you can do that. So make sure you check those policies.
Yeah.
But certainly, and contacting an organization, just pick one. And if word gets around that you have stuff, you'll get contacted. I can't tell you how many people have already contacted us knowing that we have a garden and would like to partner and receive things. So that's probably even local churches as well, reaching out to parents. Parents are involved in organizations as well. So you can do that as well. Yeah.
That's great. I definitely guess I underestimated the role of that word of mouth. Like once you reach out to one, I'm sure there's definitely a need for it out there. That's great. So you talked a bit about who's going to be taking care of the Brescia community garden. We'll hopefully have some undergrad students in food nutrition who will be interested, and then have a gardening club, as well as those elementary schools coming from growing chefs as well. What roles do students and teachers take on when they create a school garden and maybe they implement one in their own schools? How can they divide up the work of taking care of it?
Yeah, I think, you can do any part of it. We had a school just behind Brescia that looked at a garden, and we had everybody out and we were helping to actually build the garden. So we actually were there with our hose and our everything else, and digging up the soil and turning the soil. You might build some raised boxes depending. So you might have to do a little bit of construction. That can be a project that a student club or even a class does. Certainly maintaining the garden, that can be rotated amongst different classes. You can get parents involved. We do have PTAs, so they can get involved as well. Staff like to get involved. I know we've had everybody at Brescia be very excited about wanting to help out. So we're not concerned about that. I think you can divide the work very, very easily.
So there isn't issues with, I don't really feel like going out and watering the garden today, that sort of thing.
Well, we may get that.
We'll see.
Our gardens aren't done yet.
No, that's true.
We have a lot of, if you're passionate about doing it, you'll find, and you get a group that's passionate, I think you can find a way. And even neighbors, we're going to talk a bit about the challenges, and so I'll wait, but even getting neighbors involved. There are some people in the community and there are houses around your school that might actually be interested in helping you to maintain a garden.
That's true. I definitely know that there was a garden in my own neighborhood at home, and it was just lovely walking through it, even though I just had no part in it. So definitely the community, there is interest there. So Nicole has a great question. Are there plans to write up your experience making/running the garden as a case study for other institutions or schools to learn from?
We did not plan that, but Nicole, it's an excellent idea. And I think Nicole was a former Brescia grad.
Yes.
I think this is the Nicole I know. So I'll say hello to her. Certainly it would be a good thing. We will definitely be putting things up on the website, and part of that website experience will be our experience with the garden as well. And so we're looking to show people a timeline and things like that. So we would love that kind of communication. So thank you for that suggestion. We'll think about it for sure.
That's great. Thanks, Nicole. Actually, can I just ask, do you have when would that website be available for is it still in development and everything? Yeah. Okay. All right.
Yeah, it's in development right now. And again, here's another, we partnered with a community marketing organization that's helping us to build our website.
Wow.
So even those kinds of relationships can be developed as well.
Mm-hmm. It's not all on you, who's also making the garden and doing all the planting and things like that. Yeah, we need to divide up the work a little bit. It's great. Thank you. So I know you talked a little bit about growing your own food and the connection that you build with food when you do that. How can school gardens increase our awareness of the entire food system? So, from production all the way to eating and disposing of waste and things like that.
Sure. I think the biggest thing for me was, I had this idea that I wanted a garden. And so from a personal basis, but I guess I didn't appreciate maybe the amount of work sometimes that goes into it, having to go out and the amount of water and looking for pests, which sometimes, can creep in there.
Yeah.
And also, making sure that the weeds are taken care of. And so I started to get a really big appreciation for what food producers and farmers go through. And what they do for us. And I think it gave me a really big appreciation for their job. And in addition to that is the amount of time, work, resources that go into food. So you start to appreciate that, once you grow this beautiful green pepper and you get to eat it, you think about all the effort that went into that. And it really gave me more of an appreciation about food waste. I knew about it from an academic perspective.
Yeah.
But when you actually do it, I think you just get that appreciation a little differently. And so, a garden gives all that appreciation for the growth, the cycle. The learning opportunity is amazing. I love being in food because, whether it's cooking or gardening, those activities are really fun. And you can learn a lot from just doing them. And you don't even know you're learning because it's fun.
Definitely. Yeah.
So there's so many things you can do with a garden to introduce different topics. There's biology there, right? There's the environment is there. There can be math involved. Definitely. So it actually is a great way to engage everyone in a process of learning. And so that's why I get so excited about it. It's really given me that appreciation for food in general and what it takes. In addition to wanting to support locally. Yeah. Wanting to think about where I get food from, when, and how long did it travel to get to me, and so it builds that sense of community as well. And so there's so many things.
I definitely agree. I think a lot of people can say that once they start to receive some of the food from the Brescia garden, knowing exactly where it was grown, and it does build community, as you said. It's wonderful. So I feel like you've talked quite a bit about all of the benefits that students in schools can gain from having a garden, but could you speak a little bit to some of the challenges you've encountered or future schools might encounter when developing a school garden?
So the idea for a community garden has been, there for a long time. And so the one thing that came through was some funding. So there is a little bit of cost, obviously, associated with a garden, and you can have a larger cost or lesser cost depending on what you decide to do. So if you're, digging up the ground and, putting a little compost in and, taking a hose from the building and bringing it over, that's going to cost less than if you decide to get rain barrels and composters. And if you do raised beds and things like that. So there is a cost associated. And then there's the every year having to buy seedlings or having to buy seeds, which are not necessarily that expensive, but you have to take that into consideration. I think the biggest challenge, especially in a school, is that we have, we live in Canada, we have a long winter. So we have this growing season. July and August, that garden has to be maintained. Yes. And so that is probably the biggest challenge for schools, is trying to find individuals that will take care of that garden for you in July and in August. Yeah. Because of course you want to support plants that will then produce things for you in the fall. So you need to take care of them over the summer months. And we also know that a lot's going to come off in the summer. So trying to find the people that can maintain during the July, August, when we're off on summer holidays, is probably the biggest challenge for a school garden. But that's where the community members, the neighbors can come into play. Because if you say, can you take care of the garden for us and please take whatever comes off? It's a great relationship.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I can see that is certainly like the summer months would definitely be a struggle. And I guess maybe trying to create a garden club that builds that commitment to it might be helpful. And it's definitely a lot easier with elementary or high schools where they're, local and they probably live in the area. I can see it definitely being a challenge for universities or other post-secondary schools with people going home for the summer and just not being around the campus anymore. So
the good thing is on campus we have staff, right? So we have staff involved, and they're there all the time. So we can then use staff to do that. So it's hard. That's the biggest challenge I think for any garden is finding people to maintain
all the time. I know when I did mine in the summertime, I think I was shocked by just how you're really excited at the beginning. You're in June and you're planting and things are starting to grow, and then the end of August hits in September and you're still like, wow, I still need to put effort into this, and I need to pick things and I need to prune, and it can get a bit exhausting as the months go on, but finding those dedicated people definitely would help in this situation.
Sure.
Thank you. I guess if there's no other questions, we can finish with, do you need to know a lot about plants and plant biology and how to grow plants to start a garden?
Absolutely not. I knew nothing. No. I just had this idea of wanting tomatoes and basil and things like that. So, certainly not. And I noticed in the group there was inspiration for our gardens and whatnot. We definitely did a lot of research for the gardens at Brescia to see what we'd like. We actually have modeled the raised bed garden area after Growing Chefs, and because they have a series of raised bed gardens, and so we've been looking into that. I have to tell you, I forgot to send this, but I used this book. I wanted to share. Square Foot Gardening. My friend gave me this book, and it was the inspiration for my own garden because I didn't have a lot of space to do rows, so I needed to go a different way. And so you don't have to know a lot. The internet is at our fingertips. So you can go and find out things. I know when things start to go awry in my own garden that I go and I look to the internet. And it's a great resource. And again, you try. If it works, great. And if it doesn't, you try again or you move on to something else. And so it's you can learn as you go, and it's easy to do.
So this final question is actually something that I was going to ask. So great minds think alike. We have, what would be some of your key recommendations to others wishing to start a garden in their community or at their school?
I think it would be, the first thing I would do is to gauge, the level of excitement in your own school about the garden, knowing that there's going to be, probably some people you're going to have to go to get permission and all that kind of thing. So I think I would gauge with the staff members in your school, the students, even parents, the parent-teacher council, and engage in with those individuals to see the level of excitement, because that's going to help to gauge whether or not you'll be able to maintain a garden, I think, long term. Other than that, I think it's just the will of a few people to want to do it. And I think from there, you can think as big or as wonderful as you want. But I think just gauging the level of excitement and the things you'll have to go through to get permissions and things like that would probably be one of the key recommendations. And then just to start small. Sometimes what we do is we think too big. I put too much stuff in my garden and crowded it. And you learn every year, you take a little bit out. And so, start simply, and then you can start to add on and start to be a bit more adventurous. I think that would be another key recommendation for sure.
Those are great ideas. And I definitely, like you said, doing that kind of assessment of what people want, what the students want, and what the teachers and parents are interested in is definitely great, because you need that commitment, like you said, to overcome some of those challenges. So thank you. That's all the time we have today for questions. Thanks everyone for attending and for sending in those thoughtful questions. Thank you especially to Dr. Battram for answering everything today and sharing about the community garden at Brescia and a bit about what you do. I think we've all learned quite a lot about what a helpful tool a school garden can be. Not only does it help you and students learn about foods, where your food is grown and where it comes from, it can also be a great way to share foods with your friends and give back to the community, especially to those who might not have as much to eat. So feel free to complete the interactive activity that went along with this session. It will be in the activity kit that was sent out. There's also a link to a survey on page 3, which we would love if you could fill out to provide us some of your feedback. And if you'd like to participate in more events in this event series, please join us tomorrow at 10:30 and 2 p.m. That concludes our session. Thank you again, Dr. Battram, and to everybody. Have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you.